the Solo Coach Podcast.
Good afternoon, Emily.
Hi, how you doing?
Absolutely marvellous. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Very good, thank you.
Thank you for coming on today. We've been trying to make this happen for quite a while, and the day is finally upon us. So it's my pleasure to welcome Emily Airey to the podcast. Hello, Emily. Welcome to the podcast. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everyone listening and joining us. Emily and I met at a CRS editorial network, that's a mouthful, in Roundhay Park earlier this year, which was led by Craig Smith. Straight away, me and Emily hit it off, connecting over our shared experiences of changing careers and entering the world of being a solopreneur. So Emily's background is in project management, having held a wealth of senior corporate roles into now becoming a self-employed virtual assistant with Pink Spaghetti. More to come on that later. When we first met for a coffee, I was so impressed with all what Emily has to offer, and also how friendly and approachable she is. And then since we've become friends and attended multiple business networking events together, and we recently both attended each other's debut first ever speeches at networking events. I really enjoyed yours, and I believe you enjoyed mine as well.
It is, yes, very good. I enjoyed it a lot.
So I'd love to start by asking you, can you tell us more about what it is that you do now as a virtual assistant?
Absolutely, yeah. So as a virtual assistant, we like to help small businesses and independents to take away the day-to-day things that they don't like doing, the admin, the annoying bits at the bottom of the to-do list, all those things that generally when people start their own business, they really want to do it because of this certain skill or a passion that they have. But when it comes to running a business, there's all the other bits that you need to do as well. So as a virtual assistant, we come along and help with those other bits to allow a person to flourish really in their, in their business and do what they're most passionate about. So that could be things like bookkeeping, it could be social media, it could just be research, setting up documents, doing inbox management, diary management. The list is endless, and it really just depends on the individual and what their needs are and what their struggles are within a business.
Thanks, Emily. Is it right to think of a virtual assistant as someone you would bring on board into your business when you reach a certain level of success, and at the same time, because of you're becoming a victim of your own success. You've got quite a few clients on the books, but you're finding that your time in between working in your business, so your time to work on your business is very limited, and you're kind of sinking under all the demands, and then it's time to bring someone else in, but you can't necessarily afford a full-time member of staff.
Yeah, I think that's a good description, although we always try and encourage people to get some support before they get to that point, because you don't want to get to the point where you are drowning, because I think people really struggle. They struggle to sort of see what they can hand over, and they feel like they're doing everything and they don't have then the time to speak to somebody else. That is obviously when we end up coming in most of the time, because people go, I need some help, who can I pass some of this off to? But if you know that's coming, or if you know that there are lots of things on your plate that you're spending time doing, and actually it's not, like you say, you're not spending time on your business, you're kind of, yeah, that's the point. You want to get a virtual assistant involved, really. And like you say, the benefit is you don't have to hire somebody full time, because quite often people don't have enough admin or support tasks for somebody to do full time. So the benefit is, with a virtual assistant, you can use them and on an hourly basis, some time every day. You can work on just projects. So it could just be, here's one thing I need you to do that, and then we're done, and then we'll come back another time and use you again. So it's really quite flexible.
I definitely want to return to exploring the true value of a virtual assistant, as I know that there's actually quite a lot more to it than you said earlier on. But before we do that, to introduce you more, I'd love to ask you about your background and what you did before becoming a virtual assistant.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So my career has always been in project management. I started off doing various bits and pieces, got into project management. My university degree was around computers, you know, when your parents say you work in IT, that sort of thing. I've always done something related to computers. So my project management history has always been in digital. So I've worked in like websites and apps and things like that, supporting teams and helping them deliver different projects. And then in my last career, in my last role, I was there for 11 years. And the last 2 years of that, I worked in operations. So moved towards more of like a business focus and helping teams come up with new processes, implement tools, and just basically make things run smoother and more efficiently. So that's kind of where my career went, and I got to a point, I think a couple of years ago, where I found I wasn't fulfilled in my job. I couldn't really put my finger on it. I think I'd got comfortable. I'd been there 11 years, like I said. It was on paper a brilliant job. You know, I got paid all right. It was flexible. I liked the people I worked with. I had no qualms with it. And it just, yeah, it didn't sit right, and I couldn't work out what it was. And I spoke to a coach actually, and I had a few sessions with a career coach. Um, and the idea had been to try and work out how I could make this role work for me better. And when we actually worked out that I needed to leave, and that was the and that was the ultimate goal, was to move on and work out what to do next. So we spent a lot of time sort of working on my values and talking about what it was that I actually enjoyed in my role, what I was good at, rather than just what I thought I should be good at because of the job I was doing. And I went down one path and was thinking about event management and all sorts of different things. Anyway, it came to the beginning of this year, and through one reason or another, I ended up leaving my job without anything to go to, which is always really scary. Yeah, I think my overall plan had been find a new job, you know, work out what the new thing is and move on. But it was ended up sort of being a bit of a jump before I maybe was ready. But actually, I think that's often the way that helps the most, because if you know, you're never ready, are you? You're never ready. You'll always be waiting, and if something happens that makes you leave, then it just sort of pushes you to do something about it. So but then I think because of all that work I'd done with my career coach, I then started looking for other roles, and the opportunity for Pink Spaghetti landed in my inbox. It's part of a franchise. And when the email arrived and it said, "Do you like da 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 da?" and it listed these few things, you know, admin and various bits and pieces in this list, I went, yes, I do. That's me. I know that I like this now because I've done all this work, and it just sort of felt a bit like fate, which is always, you know, I never really know how to go with that, but it felt like fate. And actually, you know, after a bit of soul searching, I realized that this was the thing I needed to try. So here I am as
Et
a virtual
voila.
assistant. Hey, voila, yeah.
Thanks for the tour, the whistle stop tour. I was wondering if I could take you back and zoom into the bit that you mentioned about working with your coach, and specifically when you said we had a few conversations and we worked out that maybe what I was doing wasn't what I wanted to be doing anymore. So I wanted to change. I wanted something different.
Mhm.
How did that conversation go? And was that something your coach worked out and told you, Emily, you need something different, you're doing the wrong thing? Or was it like a conclusion that you came to through multiple conversations?
Yeah, I think it was a conclusion that I knew, and I was trying to pretend it was something else, which is the point of coaching. Was it, you know, she was talking to me and trying to get it out of me, and I think she knew that I was hiding this bit of information, and I was desperately fighting for how can I make this work for me, because it feels like it should be right. You know, I've been given a new opportunity in this role. On paper, it's great. You know, I'm earning enough money and this is great for my future, and you know, I should really want to stay. Why would I want to leave? And inside I was going, I don't want to be here, but I don't know what to do, so I can't say that out loud because it's too scary. And I think, you know, we had one or two sessions of how can we make this job better, and then she was sort of saying, is that really the right thing? And you know, are you asking the right questions here? And eventually she coaxed it out of me, and I was like, I don't really know if I should be here anymore, but I don't know what to do, and it's too scary. So she definitely coached it out of me and got me to admit it. And she was like, I suspected that was, you know, that was the thing. Um, and I think it's just a scary realization, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So it's hard to say it, like if I had a great idea, I'd be like, I don't think I want to be here, but actually I want to do this. And that's a bit of a mountain to climb, but I didn't have any idea. I was really stuck. So, but then, we had further sessions, and that was really helpful to kind of work on that and work out where I wanted to go.
Well, it's always great to hear another coaching success story, and compliments to your coach for the work that you did together, and compliments to you for doing that difficult work. I could really sense the dichotomy between that, your inner sense of what you really wanted was that like quiet hidden away voice, and then maybe the louder voice of what you think you should want, because we all have a belief of success is nice money, nice car, loads of money, nice house, but then and plenty of status in our role. But then we often find ourselves in that position. We have all of the nice things and the nice pay packet and a role of a certain level, a senior title, but it feels a bit of a hollow victory, and there's a bit of an emptiness there. I can totally relate to that from my IT background.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate where you're coming from there.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I think, I went through this with my husband. He went through the same journey and gave up a job that was, fairly like well paid, and he was on track to do some good things, but he deep down wasn't enjoying it. And I said, why are you doing this? You're unhappy. You should be doing something that you love. But then it's really hard to take that own advice, to yourself. But actually it makes sense really why, money doesn't buy happiness, and those things that they say. It's not all about that. It's about you being fulfilled and, doing what you enjoy and what you're good at.
But money does buy a virtual assistant, which is a great investment in that
I
money.
mean, it does, absolutely, yeah. And that therefore makes you happy. So,
Exactly. There you go. All roads lead back to a VA.
that's it.
But I just like to just ask you as well about what were some of the feelings that you were facing in making that, when you made that decision, took that leap of faith, left your old job, and went out there starting this completely new venture. That sounds, well, don't want to put words in your mouth. What were you feeling and thinking at the time?
Yeah. I think I felt, I mean, I've always suffered really badly from imposter syndrome. And I think that was probably one of my reasons for kind of holding on to this old job, because I thought, I'm here and everyone knows, or everyone thinks that I'm good, or they haven't quite worked out that I'm not good, but I'm still here. So they must believe it. And then I think the thought of jumping into a new job at the time, I had a head of title, and I was like, I can't do that somewhere else. They're going to realize that I'm not very good. So I had all this kind of real struggle with, self-doubt, I suppose. And, I didn't have any belief in what I was able to do and what I could give to other people in terms of a role. And I think then starting looking at this new business, like, was real. I've never thought about owning my own business. Like, that was never my plan. And lots of people do, and that's their aim. And I never had. And it was obviously thinking about, this is all on me now. I need to actually earn my own money and not just get paid a wage by somebody else. So that's kind of a scary concept. What if it fails? What am I going to do if it all goes horribly wrong? All that sort of doubt and kind of nervousness about it was I was going along with. And it sounds like I'm really just here to plug coaches, but I did actually then speak to another coach. I've had two. They've been instrumental. Honestly, you haven't told me to say this.
But I'll pay you afterwards for
I
saying.
know, yeah, I know. But I spoke to another coach, and the first conversation we had was, I said, look, I've got to make this really big decision, and I don't know how to make it. I was like, here's my situation. I've given up this job. This has landed in my lap. It seems like a really good thing, but I'm not sure. How do I weigh up the pros and cons? And her advice was like, don't weigh up the pros and cons, because you will sit there for hours trying to find a reason not to do it, or thinking you've almost got there, but then finding all these reasons not to do it, and then you'll have this doubt. She's like, if you need to have a look at it. It needs to be sensible. You need to be financially viable, like that sort of stuff you can't ignore. But generally, if your gut is telling you to do something, you should just do it. And there's not a bad decision. There is a good decision, and there is a situation that maybe needs some tweaking. So she's like, try it. If it goes well, well done you. If it doesn't go well, change something and make it better. So it's not a failure. It doesn't mean that it's not that black and white, that it's perfect and it's gone really badly. It's all just a road of bumps and, junctions and all these things that you need to go down to find the right path. So that was really helpful. So that's kind of where I ended up. And I went, yeah, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I did.
Kudos. Thank you so much. I love that, what you just said there. And I was going to say, it's not black and white, it's pink. We know that. But yeah, that's so true in what you said there. And I feel like I want to tell people to just rewind that last minute and listen to it again twice over, because there's so much truth in it. And once again, it's the power of leaning into something new, not knowing how it's going to work out, but trying it anyway. Because Einstein that said doing the same thing consistently, repeating it again and again and again, and expecting a different result is the recipe for, like, it's insanity. The definition of insanity. I butchered that one, but you know the point. And I do know people still in careers that I was once in, and I still speak to some people who are doing the same things over and over again and are kind of waiting from year to year or even decade to decade for something to change around them. And I realized that for something to change for me, I had to change something, which meant taking a leap of faith, doing something brave, and making a lot of sacrifices, sacrificing the nice salary, the big title, the nice car. But I knew that if I never tried it, I'd never know. And something else I've never said on the podcast, I'll let you into a secret. Me neither. I never really wanted to be self-employed. I never was excited about owning my own business. It was more the concept of, I want to try it and see how it feels, and I want to do something differently, and I want to, follow this purpose-driven, passion-led cause that I feel drawn to, and just see where it ends up. And my journey's been extremely difficult and bumpy. But so I want to ask you, how's your journey been since taking that enormous leap of faith and becoming a virtual assistant earlier this year?
Yeah, I think so far it's gone well. I think, like you say, it's only been earlier this year, so it's not been many months for me. And I do have the benefit of having a franchise behind me, which I think is really, I think that's one of the reasons that I went for this option, because I wouldn't have thought of it otherwise. And I think the support I have got through the franchise has been amazing. They've been, they hand you a business in a box. So you've got the branding and you've got, the email address and some tools to use and some training and, how to run a business and all that sort of stuff. So that has been, really, really helpful. And then they provide ongoing support. So, I've got that kind of comfort blanket, which I've always said to people, I want that bit of a comfort blanket because I don't feel quite like I could do it on my own. And maybe now I could. Maybe now I've kind of gone through that journey. Possibly I could then do it again myself one day. But as it stands, it's gone well. There is obviously the uphill struggle of when you start a business, you've got to find clients, you've got to find people to work with, and they don't just all arrive on your doorstep at day one asking for your support, unfortunately. There's a lot of hard graft that's got to go in to actually build those relationships and get to know people and get your name out there. And it is a challenge. Like, that's a real confidence thing for me, is sort of, it's always a bit nerve-wracking saying to somebody, hello, can you pay me to help you? Because I'm okay maybe. But I need to get better at that. And I am getting better. And actually the clients that I've got give me such good feedback that actually it does really boost my confidence. And I went on holiday last week. We were just talking about it earlier. I went on holiday, didn't take my laptop. My clients were fine with it. And one of them, when I came back, he went, do you know what? He said, I really noticed that you were gone. I was like, okay, that's not good for you, but yay for me. So, it's nice to get that sort of feedback, and that sort of thing is really helpful. It's helpful for your confidence and, and build you. So far, touch wood, something. It's been smooth, but I anticipate I will surely have those bumps at some point.
Definitely. And I've equally heard some great feedback from other people who've met you. I believe I know a few people who you're working with, but I don't know exactly who your clients are. but I've only ever heard great things about you. And you've always impressed me whenever we've met, and particularly when I've seen you speaking on stage in front of a group. But thank you for sharing. You're the first person I've interviewed on the podcast who's part of who's a franchisee. And it seems like it's a really good way of transitioning from being traditionally full-time employed in a business to then moving towards being fully self-employed, but not being completely on your own, kind of stood in the middle of the business networking desert, wondering how to sell yourself, having to create a brand, a reputation for that brand, and then a pricing structure, and all the things that I've been wrestling with over the last 6 months. It sounds like you've had a head start, really.
I think so, yeah. And I think as well for me, because I wasn't doing this as a job before, so a lot of people are, a designer or a copywriter or something like that within a business, and then they go self-employed. I feel like at least they've got that confidence that they can do that job. All they're doing is finding new people, and people who are designers are probably going to be quite good at marketing themselves, I guess, because they've got, that sort of thinking. And I think because I was doing a completely different job, although, a lot of the skills are transferable, I wasn't a virtual assistant who has gone on their own. I was doing something totally different. So for me, it was a completely new thing. I'm starting my own business and I'm doing a different job. So it's sort of going, how do I tell people what I can do? And how do I market a business, and how do I set up a business? And I've never thought about this. And yeah, it was definitely a head start. So I would recommend it to anyone who is sort of thinking along those lines. I'm sorry that there's not, there might be a coaching franchise, but it feels like you've done a very good job of the branding side and all of that. I love your brand.
Thank you very much. Shout out to the Solo Coach Design. But yeah, it's certainly been difficult for me. I know I've learned an awful lot, and I was going to ask you what have been kind of your biggest learnings so far since being relatively newly self-employed as a franchisee.
Yeah, I think my biggest learning right at the beginning was about networking, because that was one of my big things that I thought, I don't want to network, because again, it's that I have to tell people, I have to try and sell myself to people and say, here's what I'm good at, and please work with me, and that just makes me feel a bit ick. However, that's not what networking's about. For all those reasons you mentioned at the beginning, we met. You're one of the first people I met at a networking event from starting my business, and we've just built a relationship. We've become friends, like you say, and that's the good thing about networking, is that you speak to people and they get to like you, and they may use your services, or they may tell somebody else about it, or this might come around in a few months or a few years or something like that, but it doesn't have to be. And nobody likes being sold to. You don't need to do that. Have this conversation at every networking event. Nobody likes a person who goes up and says, hello, I've got these services, I can do this for you, here's my card, and then leave. It's about earning that trust from somebody. So that has really been quite a nice learning curve for me, really, is to know that I don't have to actually go out and push my services on people. I just have to build a relationship and be able to tell them what I do, but also learn about them. It's learning about what their business needs are and being interested in people rather than just talking about yourself all the time, which is what I've just done for the last half an hour. But
No, I really liked your share there. It's so true. And I was having a similar conversation with Ian and Tracy, who run the We Are in Business networking events that we both attend. And it's kind of like the unspoken rule about networking, and the hidden kind of the trick or the secret to networking, if you were. You're not going in there just to make a sale and just to pitch your services, because if you are, you probably won't be successful in doing that. You're going in there to work out who you can get to know and build a relationship, build a rapport with, and then at some point you might be able to refer them some business. They might refer you some business. They might become a client, or they might just remain a business connection for a long time. And it's kind of, I refer to it as like planting the seeds and then waiting to at some point reap the harvest, but not expecting that anything's going to come back. Just being positively positively optimistic
Yeah.
in the space, and understanding that someone once said to me about business networking, you'll have to kiss a lot of frogs, which I think is a good way of describing it. Sometimes you will spend time speaking to people or even doing some work for them, providing a quote to them, and it'll go nowhere, but you never know.
No, you don't. You don't know whether that person, it might just not be the right time, but you've spoken to them and you've told them what you could do for them. And they're like, oh yeah, maybe, but not quite now. But once you've had that, like you say, you've planted that seed, you may see them every now and again. And every time they see you, they think, oh yeah, actually, do you know what? This is becoming more important. And at the time when they need you, you're the person at the forefront of their mind because you've built that relationship, because you've kept in touch, even though it might have been a year ago that you sent them a quote, you're at the front of their mind, really. So yeah, I agree.
I'm wondering, before we dive further into the virtual assistant role, I was curious if there's someone listening who perhaps is in full time doing a similar job to what you used to do with a similar skill set, and they are feeling like you were feeling, and craving a change, and looking and interested in a career change, or perhaps becoming self-employed or franchisee. Is there any advice you give to them? So anything that you know now that you wish you would have known back then, or what would you say to them?
I'd say that it's very easy to spend lots of money and eat lots of food when you go networking. So be prepared for coffees and pastries in the morning. Seriously, I
Love it.
think it's just being prepared to be a bit poor for a while and kind of, it's an investment, especially in a franchise, because you have to pay for the franchise up front. So there's a cost associated in that. But even going on, out on your own, you need to be in a position where you are quite poor for a little while things build up. You need to have that ability to kind of still live. And I think I knew that, but it's obviously people tell you that, and actually the reality of it, you go, oh, actually, yeah, no, I need to be really tight this month, and I have to start saying no to the things, like you said, the things that I could just easily spend the money on, go out every time my friends say, can we go out? Now I'm like, I have to pick and choose the opportunities. So you just have to be prepared for that. But, trust in yourself that it isn't going to last forever. And it's just, once you've kind of built things up, then you will get there. Or, it's not a bad decision, make a change, do something else. But, be prepared for that, I suppose. I don't really think I can think of another option.
You don't need to. That was so powerful. Again, there's been no one say that before in that way. I think people have said, it can take a lot longer than you think. It'll cost more than you might think, and it'll be harder than you might think. But you're very right, and I totally echo your words. There is great value in having a buffer and a comfort blanket, and then that realistic awareness that you know it might be tough for a while, and there might be a few months where your harvest is pretty small, but by continuing to keep building connections, by continuing to keep growing your business, it will grow. It just takes some time. And I hear all sorts of stories of some people that I'm hearing the phrase, your first 2 years is really tough, keeps being banded around the events I'm going to. And given that I'm only, 2/3 through my first year, I think, oh dear, another year and a third
Yeah,
of it being really tough. But
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean it will be. It just means that that was their experience. So be prepared potentially for a couple of tough years
yeah.
before it becomes more consistent.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And it is scary, isn't it? When you look at it, you think, I think when you, at the beginning, when somebody says, oh, 2 years, you go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, fine. And then when, like you say, you're kind of, you've done a month, you've done another month, and you're going, oh, 2 years is a lot of months to be in this position, but it isn't usually flatline. It could get better, and everyone's different. You could have a real peak at the beginning and then it could drop off, and you just have to be prepared for whatever happens.
Exactly, and one thing I've learned is how seasonal my industry is. I don't know about yours, but I'm finding that a lot of people are away in summer, and obviously a lot of people, parents, busy looking after their children. They haven't necessarily got the capacity or the time, or they aren't looking to take on a coach, additional services. And I think a similar thing happens around Christmas. But I've heard that apparently September, October, and November are busier months where business really gets going, business networking events get really heavily attended, and essentially we all ramp it up a notch or two. So I'm yet to see that, as I haven't been through that period before. I did do a little bit last year, but I'm interested in seeing what that's going to be like this year, and see if that rings true.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it has also been quiet for me. I mean, it's like same with me. It's the first summer holidays I've been through, so I can't compare it. But I think in my head I was like, oh, I'll use this time when the work is quiet to connect with people and build up those relationships ready for September. But the amount of people who've said, do you think we can speak after the summer holidays? Because everyone's juggling childcare and trying to work and that sort of thing. And it is, yeah, it is a funny, quiet period. But I think it's a good chance to sort of have a look at, look at your goals for the rest of the year. And, if things are going to ramp up in September, how are you going to ride that? What are you going to do? Who are you going to speak to? I think it's actually quite a good time to reflect on that and use the quiet period to be ready, get all of your stuff out the way, all your admin, get it out the way so that you've done it in August, and then you can just focus on, on work and all that sort of stuff in September.
And like you say, for me, that was a live demonstration of the power of networking, because it's having conversations about business supply and demand to then realize that, oh, it's not just my business that's a bit quiet at the minute. It's not just me who's struggling to connect with people because everyone's busy looking after their children. It's us all. Therefore, it's a theme and it's a trend, because it's so easy when you are working fully self-employed on your own to feel like you've done something wrong,
Yeah.
when it could be that it's a period like over the Christmas period, I imagine, when everyone's shut down and enjoying time with their families. So to
Yeah.
expect responses on Christmas Day is probably not very realistic, and to expect quite quick responses from parents during the 6 week holiday is also probably not very realistic.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
every day is a school day.
it is. But you're right about the networking, because there are some sort of groups I've been to and places I've been where you speak to people, and actually there is real value in getting together with other people in industries to learn that sort of thing, because you can, it's talked about all the time, working on your own can be very lonely, and you can feel like it's all going wrong for you or something's happening to you. But actually finding those networking groups, or just working groups, or however people set them up, it can be really useful to learn those sorts of things, so you can go, okay, it's not just me, I just need to ride this one out and get going in September.
Exactly. So the power of networking with people who are outside of your industry, but then the enormous power of networking with other people who are in the same industry. And I know you do a lot of that, because I've seen your fabulous LinkedIn posts about spending time with other Pink Spaghetti virtual assistants. So again, absolutely, so much value in this for anyone listening. And then to jump in again to speaking of virtual assistants, so I wanted to ask you, what's the true value that a virtual assistant can really add to a business? Not just bringing them on board, but partnering with them and then working together for a period of, say, months or even years. How do you see it developing for the business?
I mean, I think partnering is a key word, really. I think people should think of a virtual assistant as more of a partner or an add-on to their business, rather than, or not an add-on, but like part of their business, rather than somebody who just comes in and out and does a little bit of admin here and there. So like, me and the Pink Spaghetti franchisees, we all try and learn about the person's business, our clients. We don't just come in and do a particular task they've asked us. We need to learn about what their challenges are and what their goals are, and how the piece of work we're doing fits in, but also how we might be able to add value in other ways. So it's kind of supporting that client long term, being able to dip in and out in the future. They might have a change in their business, and how that change is going to affect them. You can come back in and support them again with that sort of history and that knowledge as you kind of go through your relationship, even if it's like, you do one project and then you don't come back for a couple of months and then you do another one. You're still a person who knows a bit about their business and can come back and again support them with, times where there might be a bigger business who's, made loads of redundancies, so you need to come and help during that transition point, or they might be having a period of growth and you're there to support while they grow before they get to a point where they need a new person. So you're kind of filling that gap. There's all sorts of ways really sort of, how we can add value like that.
So it's far more than email inbox administration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's hard. And when people say, what does a virtual assistant do? Is I find that really hard because people want you to say, oh, well, I do inbox management and I do bookkeeping and I do this and I do that. But actually, it's more of a, how can you work together with somebody to kind of take those bits of stress and those bits of admin and all the things that are, blocking them, because everybody's different. Like I've worked with one client who's a bit of a technophobe, and she's kind of, she needed some help with creating a presentation that somebody else might really very easily be able to do. So it's sort of working to your strengths and working out where, where you can support people and where they can do the things that they're strongest at and they enjoy, and you can take away the other bits to sort of help them, build their business and help it grow.
It was interesting what you said about that client, being a bit of a technophobe, because that perfectly is a great segue into what I wanted to ask you next, which is, how do you see AI affecting your industry as a virtual assistant? Do you see AI replacing virtual assistants completely and being a massive threat, or do you see it being your greatest tool in your toolbox and being able to make you much more effective?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people think that as a virtual assistant, I am AI and I'm on the website answering their little chatbots, but that's not what we do. I think with everything, I think AI is a great support for us. So I think there are lots of tools out there that I use. I mean, ChatGPT is my favorite. I use it all the time to help me do what I was going to do, but quicker. If I have to do research for somebody, it gives me a really good starting point. I can ask ChatGPT, it can offer me a few websites to look at. I will then go into those websites, check what they've, what information they've got. For example, it still needs a human element. It's not gonna replace people. It needs somebody to sense check it and also just to kind of, I don't know, organize its thoughts, I suppose, or put it into the right format. Or I don't think it's going to replace, but I do think it will support. And I think a lot of people, there might be jobs that somebody would have given to a virtual assistant. They think, I can do it myself faster. And that's fine, because the aim of this is to, allow people to get to where they need to be more efficiently, as long as, all the advice about AI, don't just trust everything it tells you, just sense check it. But even that, like some people say to me, some of my clients, can you do this? I don't mind if you use AI. That's fine. Okay, so that job that might have taken me an hour will only take me 15 minutes, for example, and then it costs less for the client. And I could do more jobs for them in the time I'm allocated. So I don't find it a threat. I think it's a useful tool, and I think everyone should embrace it, but be wary of it.
Thanks for that explanation. I listened to a great podcast last week. Mo Gaudat being interviewed on the Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett,
Oh, yeah.
and he was saying that AI will get to the point where you can ask it to do something and it'll be able to do anything you ask it, but the human bit is that you might ask it in the example of an architect, you might ask it to design you a house that's in a certain way, and it might do it perfectly for you, but then the human element, a human architect will be able to do that, but then say to you, knowing you, I think you'd prefer this house of this style, and what you're asking for and what you actually want and will enjoy and will fit you and your lifestyle are two slightly different things. So I agree, there's always space for that human element of knowing what to ask it for, but also knowing what you should be asking for and what you actually want versus what you think you want, like we said back in the earlier in the conversation.
Well, this is it. And I was going to say, it sort of ties back to my coaching experience. Thought I knew what I wanted, but they were saying something different. But then my coach could kind of read it, and her experience knew to ask the certain questions and to be able to read that. You wouldn't be able to get that. I'd be going to AI saying, you know, how can I improve my experience in this job, or how can I find another job that's just the same as this one I've already got? And actually, that's not really what I mean. And yeah, it needs that relationship and that human element to coax that out.
Exactly. So yeah, shout out to the AI coaches and AI coaching. It's really powerful. I've used it myself. It's brilliant. I'd say to anyone, give it a go. But when you find that it's a bit lacking or you get stuck with it because it just gives you it'll give you whatever you ask it for.
Well,
Having a conversation with a human coach, engaging with a human VA or human architect, you're going to get a slightly different experience that's
yeah,
maybe little bit more human and might get better results.
I'd like to think so.
Absolutely. Hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So, as we start to draw the conversation to a close, if there's someone listening who's got a business and they're quite successful, but they're really busy, they're drowning in tasks, sounds like one of my clients, got a to-do list as long as your arm, and they're saying, I'm pulling my hair out, I've got all these things to do. I think I might need a VA. Where can they start in order to get in touch with you? And then how would you initially engage with that person? Kind of what can they expect? Because if they've already got no time, if you're wanting a whole week of their time, that's going to be impossible. But I know that you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it depends on what sort of thing is needed. So what we normally do is have a discovery session to start with, to understand what, what the person's struggles are, what they're, like I say, learn about their business and understand their goals and what they're trying to achieve. What we might do is ask somebody, because I think some people find it difficult to know what to give over. So it might be that we say, spend a week, and every time you do something, make a note of it. And if it comes up more than, a few times, it's a repetitive task, you're doing it over and over, that might be the sort of thing you can give to a VA. And then it's a case of having maybe an onboarding session. If you want to go ahead, have an onboarding session to train the VA, to train me on what it is that you're asking to do, what any logins are, any kind of processes that you already follow. And again, just to kind of understand in depth what it is that needs to be done. I would take multiple notes so that I wouldn't have to keep coming back, and I could go away and reference them and get on and do the work. And then hopefully it would just be regular check-ins. So it might be once a week, or it might be once a day, depending on what people need. And again, it sort of depends what the work is. When it's something like inbox management, it might need a lot of input, because you've got to understand the person a bit more on what sort of emails, or what the style that they write in. But some things you can just hand over and say, here's this thing, here's the brief, go away and do it, come back to me when you're done. So it's like I say, it's really flexible, and it just depends on what the job is. But that's what the discovery calls are about, just to understand in full really what's needed.
So it's flexible and it's bespoke per client, but it also is a standard process that you
Yes,
follow with each client, which is tried and tested and works.
absolutely, yeah.
I like it. And finally, how can someone who's listening find out more and get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so I mean, if you Google Pink Spaghetti Leads, all of my socials should come up. So I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. There's a Pink Spaghetti website, pink-spaghetti.co.uk. And then each of the VAs have got a contact page, so you can search for the person who's nearest you. So anyone who's in and around Leeds will get me, and that will just allow you to get in touch directly.
And is that so that they can work in person with you face to face, or is
Yeah.
it all virtual?
So yeah, so we tend to, again, like I said about the relationship building, we work in territories so that you can actually meet a person and build a relationship, ideally because they're in person, but you don't have to be in their office to do the work. So, you can meet up if you need to, but then you can just be at home doing your thing when you're not together. So, but I mean, I do have a client who wants me to go into his office, so I do that every other week. So there's lots of options, but I mean, we can work with people all over. So I've got clients in different parts of the country through my existing network. It doesn't really matter, but obviously having people close by does mean that you can build that sort of face-to-face relationship, which is always nice to speak to people.
And it sounds like, given that you are part of a franchise, if you are unable or going on holiday or going to be off sick for a prolonged period, I assume there's always going to be someone with capacity to fill in if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So each of the franchisees has got the option to build teams within, within their different territories. But then, like you say, if there's no capacity and holidays or even a skill set thing, if somebody came to me with something that I just have never heard of and couldn't do, I might pass it on to another franchisee and they could pick it up on my behalf. And like you say, it doesn't have to be face to face, could be virtual. So, that's easy to do, is to pass it on. And within, I think there's 55 maybe franchisees at the minute, with all sorts of different backgrounds and experience. So, there's usually somebody out there who can do what's needed.
So if you're listening, if you're at capacity, if you've got loads to get done and you haven't got enough time to get it all done, what are you waiting for? Pick up the phone, go on the Pink Spaghetti website, find Emily and give her a shout, because it won't be long until you're probably at capacity and there won't be any Emily left to go round.
At the minute, our strap line is, we're the 25th hour in your day. So I'll be the 25th hour in lots of people's days.
I love it. And on that note, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm glad we were able to make it happen. And thank you for sharing so openly about your journey and your story. You've reminded me why we hit it off so well when we first connected. I'm looking forward to a follow-up coffee with you. And I definitely have a couple of sales experiences that I've had recently that I want to share with you after the recording's finished. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great. And I appreciate you having me on.
And thanks to everyone listening. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, like, leave us a review, and reach out to either of us, myself, David, thesolocoach.co.uk is my website, and Emily, she gave her details earlier on. All the details will be down below in the episode description on all the various platforms. Thank you for listening. I'll see you all again in the near future.
Thanks. Bye.
The Solo Coach Podcast.